Scramble. This is another angle, a little closer actually. And the cloud of dust that went bursting out, and this gentleman's so lucky to be getting out alive with that thing falling down basically right on top of him. You can see in the background too, there were people walking on the street where that building collapsed. So let's hope they did get out safely. And we will continue to cover this all evening long and stay with this as we get more information. Lonnie, there has been some talk about the heavy rain last night because it was really intense and nobody knows what the cause of this collapse was, but there's always a thought that perhaps that's something unstable can become even more unstable.
Look, New York City picked up about 1.5 inches, a little bit over 1.5 inches of rain. Now, portions of our area, I mean, saw 5 inches of rain, but in the city itself, in the area where the collapse took place, let's say between 1.5 inches and 2 inches of rain. I'm not a structural engineer, so I can't tell you what that would do to a building. I'm going to stay away from that, but that's what you had. And the winds also were not to the level to where they could do damage like that. Let me show you what we've got. Because yesterday, hey, you had bigger winds yesterday. You had rainfall. That storm is a memory. 41 degrees as of right now. The winds that we're looking at, all right, they're going to continue to get weaker as you push through the late night hours tonight. Cooler temperatures for your day tomorrow, all the way through Thursday. An overall tranquil week that lies ahead. No rain is expected until next week. High pressure's filling in. It brings in that sort of northwest flow, so expect colder air out there. Few stray clouds, but a lot more sunshine tomorrow. And some of those temps are all going to remain at or below average. So look at this yesterday with that miserable weather. You were 61 degrees. We took you down to 45 today, 16-degree drop there, 45 tomorrow, 43 on Wednesday. Rainfall numbers are not out there. So let's pull up the extended forecast. You can take a peek for yourself. Again, we talk about how we're basically tranquil for the work week. Saturday, you're going to see some more clouds come into the area. Sunday, we thought
she working in that side of the building or what have you, but that green roofed structure is really just to protect people from as they walk by on the sidewalk from getting hit from anything from above. So investigators, once of course they determine that there's no one under this pile of debris here, the next thing they're going to do is assess the structural stability of the building. That'll be up to the Department of Buildings. And then, of course, then they'll be able to, get traffic moving and things like that around there. But right now, we don't know how unstable this portion of the building is. It is the corner. And again, it's a load-bearing exterior wall here that we're looking at.
Given the damage that we see here on this video, I mean, and your experience in knowing structures, how they work, how they hold up, how they eventually collapse. Would there have been warning signs? Would there have been like a rumble? Would there have been pieces of this that fell off that you think maybe some people would have had a warning, or does this just happen all at once?
I'm pretty sure this all was one entire collapse kind of happening in a very short period of time. And we've had obviously very high winds for the last day or so, and that may have played a role here in one way or another. We just don't know. You notice on sort of the upper portion of the building that the floors actually are missing because they're on the ground now. Some of the floors are still hanging off like cantilevered off the edge of the floor. So this is, like I said, this will take some time to figure out what happened here. But in my mind, this was a sustained collapse that occurred over a very short period of time. Perhaps it was what we call a progressive collapse, where one area starts to fall and then it basically pancakes all the way down to the ground.
When you say period of time, what kind of period of time would that look like?
Just seconds, really. I mean, this whole thing probably was over in about 10 seconds. So, but what precipitated, what caused it, that's going to be in question right now, because I can't see a lot from just from this one corner here. But again, it looks like, perhaps there was something going on there that I'm not seeing, in the debris pile. But obviously, like I said, this was a complete collapse of that entire portion of that corner of the building there. And
which is really striking. We're looking at a side and end of a building to just almost be shorn off, right? Usually, not usually, but often when these happen, you see the whole building come down. To see a portion of it just sliced off almost and come down like that is really, really striking.
Right. So that portion of the building was destabilized for some reason. There's nothing right now I can see here that's going to tell us why. But again, it also indicates that the rest of the building, of course, is going to have to be, and they're going to be looked at. And of course, they're probably just going to evacuate and keep people out of this until they get complete structural assessment of how this happened, what caused it to happen, and what other portions of the building are destabilized now because you're missing the corner walls here.
You mentioned that wind could be a factor in this collapse. Can you explain why?
Sure. Well, wind is a force, right? I mean, if anyone's standing, you know, in Midtown Manhattan during a windy day and their umbrella goes upside down and things, and they can feel almost like something pushing on them. Well, wind does the same thing to buildings. And so there's really good possibility that there may have just been enough of the wind in a particular moment in time where, again, if there was a destabilized portion of the building, an unstable area, that in fact that may have precipitated this. But that's one factor in many. You know, this could also happen, and I don't think this is what happened here, but you know, we've seen over the years in the city here where you know, vehicles have gone into buildings basically and impacted them and then caused partial collapses, which is possible here. I don't think so, but it's certainly possible. There's nothing indicating that right now. But those are all, again, these are all a list of factors that, you know, the immediate need, of course, is to rescue anybody who's trapped in that pile, get everybody else out of the building, and then they can start looking about stabilizing the remainder of the building, and then, of course, eventually figure out, like, how did this happen and why.
I'm guessing you don't have any insight as to what work was going on at the building prior to today, correct?
No, just the fact that that's what we call the sidewalk shed, that green sort of covered roof structure there. That's not the scaffolding that the workers would work on to actually do repair work. For example, in a building like this is a brick load-bearing exterior wall, meaning that these, you know, you can see that there's missing a couple floor at the very top is completely gone. It's actually on the floor below there I'm seeing now. That a brick wall like this does require, you know, maintenance. This building's probably at least 100 years old, and it requires maintenance. You know, with the weather and everything, it wears out all the mortar, the cement basically between the bricks, and again, that can lead to situations where the wall is destabilized as a whole, or even just portions of the wall actually may be destabilized. And that's why I'm saying that the shed is that green roofed structure there is solely to protect people walking on that sidewalk in front. If a brick should fall off or something else, it's going to strike that and not the people. But that's not the scaffolding that would be used perhaps for, you know, for actual work and stuff like that.
So just to clarify, I just want to make sure, because this is a really important point that we're talking about right here. I just want to clarify the fact that they have this shed structure that you're talking about, the green portion that we're seeing here on the video, tells you that there was debris falling or could have fallen from this building.
Yeah, that's usually the reason they're there. They're also put up when work actually will be conducted to make sure that if workers are up on the face of the building doing work and stuff, that protection still be in place. But the fact that it's there indicates that in all likelihood, they were concerned about things falling down. I can't see on the other side from I think there is actually, now I can see in the video, sort of the base of the building going the other direction. Look at the sidewalk shed there as well. So it's hard to tell. We'll find out. I mean, there's a lot of metal debris in this pile, which is not something I would expect to find. I can't see that it's actually scaffolding underneath the ladder truck there. It's possible. I mean, I see some things that might indicate that's what it was, and perhaps there was some scaffolding in the corner of this building. I don't know. We'll find out, of course. The other thing to point out here is that I see like there's this metal chain link fence in front of on the other side of the street, of course. And I don't know if that had anything to do with this, if there was some kind of, again, construction work or concern about it, but we're only getting a very small, sort of limited view of kind of what's happening here.
Right. When it comes to scaffolding around the city, it's kind of a bane of people's existence to deal with this stuff. That's up, it's unsightly, it's there for so long. But in this case, you're saying it appears it was in response or there to handle real work that was at least begun or at least recognized as something to work on.
Yeah, it's very possible. We just don't know. I mean, like I said, it's hard to tell from this short video here exactly what's going on around the site things, but it's clear that, like I said, the reason you put the shed up is because of falling debris. Perhaps they've already had some problems of bricks or other portions of the building coming down, smaller pieces, and that's why they erected that shed. What's interesting is that I'm looking at it again. The corner, actually, you can notice that it's sort of missing at that point. This would have had to have been carried around to the other side. I'm wondering, I guess what I'm seeing on the ground then is probably the remnants of perhaps of the other piece of the shed that may have been up against the one that's still standing there. So, but like I said, the main thing is to make sure that right now, the biggest important thing is to make sure that there's no known victims underneath this debris pile here, that there's no people still trapped in their apartments. That does happen from time to time, where people are trapped in a portion of an apartment that can't get out. I doubt that's the case here, but the fire department's got to get access to the building, go through every floor, basically clear everybody out, because we just don't know how unstable the rest of the building is right now, just looking at it.
Yeah, we're really literally looking into the cutaway of certain people's apartments there, just ripped open for the world to see. Talk about, if you can, the process, the painstaking process of trying to find people in that rubble. That looks like a really, really tough, challenging situation.
It will, and it turns out that the FDNY has, of course, as it does in many respects, has one of the top rescue units in the country, and the collapse rescue units happen to be based in the Bronx. So they'll be on scene there. They'll be assessing what they find, what's underneath the pile there. They're going to be asking, there's probably someone there around that building that saw it, heard it and turned around and saw it go down. They're going to ask them, did they see anybody walking by or what have you before that happened? So they're trying to get an idea of what's the likelihood of somebody being under that pile. I think perhaps one of the nothing's good in this situation, but one of the instances here is that it's a relatively small debris pile, and from what I can tell here, it's not like in a lot of collapses you get a situation where the debris pile actually stabilizes the rest of the building, and I don't think that's the case here. So as far as I could tell, but I'm sure that the Rescue Company 3 that's there in the Bronx, who has a collapse rescue unit, a whole truck devoted to this kind of situation, they're trying to go through all the information to figure out what's the likelihood there. And if they can't directly access it because of the stability of that debris above, because those floors that we're looking at right now that are leaning and stuff, those could easily fall down while they're trying to remove people underneath there. So typically what the fire department does is when they arrive on the scene, this Tower Ladder is probably the first new ladder company that's there. They're trained to look for any surface victims, we call them, people who it's obvious that they're trapped where you can see them, and they'll get them out of the way immediately. Basically, it's dangerous, but they'll basically remove those people. It's the ones that we perhaps can't see, and we don't know there's anyone under here. They just have to be basically a situation where they're going to decide how to access that area underneath. They may bring them some additional heavy equipment to move some of it away, and then basically get down in there. Because I'm almost sure that up in that tower ladder, they're looking down. They're looking down on top of that pile just to see if they can see anyone that might be under this debris pile.
Well, like so many apartment buildings here in the city, Professor, a lot of them are built on top of businesses. And according to some of the maps that we've been looking up online here, at last check, there did seem to be a deli, a bodega, mini mart type of business that is open there at that corner. Here is another look at some video just coming into our newsroom of a different angle. You can tell there that it's further across the street where it's just giving us another view of the damage and the facade, how much of that facade actually just crumbled there to the ground. And as we continue to observe this video, back to my point, Professor, so many businesses underneath these apartment complexes, and at last checked, it does look as though that there was a business underneath there in this particular section. Again, we do not know of any injuries whatsoever, but getting back to your point about how quickly this collapse may have happened, my heart just sank when you said it was probably just a matter of seconds before all of this debris came tumbling down, particularly with the commercial buildings underneath there.
Right, and the fire department obviously, New York City has the top-notch rescue companies, as I said earlier. And, they've had situations like this many times before. And what they're going to end up doing is they're evacuating the rest of the building, basically, they're gonna, if there is a bodega there, which we believe there is in that corner, what they may have to do is actually access that from the walls inside the apartment building itself, right? So there's an adjacent apartment next to the to that. You know, we're seeing in the video for the viewers is a drone up there, which is a new, obviously a new technology the fire department is using for this kind of situation to get an aerial view of what's happening. So they'll access that bodega perhaps from another side, from inside the building, from another wall, basically, to see, to make sure there's nobody that might be trapped in there who couldn't get out. You know, again, if it's in the corner there, then they probably did not have access to get out of the building, and they may actually still be inside the store and the remaining portion of that, if in fact there's again a bodega on the corner. Just can't tell at this point.
Professor, the initial video we were looking at and see right here, it makes it appear that it's the end of a building, right? The new video now shows that it's in fact the corner. A corner just fell down. Have you seen that before? And that just looks so striking to me, at least. What do you make of that?
Well, again, you know, because I don't know all the facts here at this point, but I can see how wind is affected by, you know, the face of a building, but more importantly, the corners of buildings are points where wind can play some important roles in sort of moving across the building and stuff. So it's possible that had something to do with it. Again, I don't know, but it is definitely the corner. And, you know, we'll find out. This appears to me, is if you can see on the top floor, the floor is still intact there. So this was an exterior wall collapse, right? So this is what the wall started coming down and it pulled some of the floors down with it. I think that's pretty clear at this point. So the wall would have been falling. Again, we don't know why. Was it rain? All the rain that we had in the last day, there may have been, again, destabilizing part of the wall. Was it a rain and wind, perhaps? But in any case, it looks like the exterior wall came down and literally the floors came with them. So some of the floors are still sort of hanging on, some are down below. But that looks to me like what happened here.
Latest update from the FDNY is that there have been no injuries that they can report at this point in time. I just wonder why we haven't seen this before, or we don't see this more often, because I don't know, we're talking about older buildings, older city, so many of them built at the same time, roughly, right? 100 years ago or so. This is really something to see, and we don't see it that often.
No, we're fortunate we don't see that often. That's why New York City has one of the only cities in the country is a very unique facade inspection program, where older buildings are required to be inspected on a periodic basis to verify that the facade, in this case, I mean, facade implies, you know, is a specific word that, you know, means something that's been put on the outside, but facade also includes these situations like this, where it's not just the face of the building, but it's a load-carrying face of the building. So it's a brick wall that holds up that portion of the building, basically. So that's why these inspections are so important. I would hope to think that the fact that the city is doing them maybe has prevented some of these things from happening. Sometimes they're simply decorations. You might remember years ago that an architect was walking down, I forgot, somewhere in Midtown, and was struck by a piece of the building decorations coming off the front face of the building. So we're in an old city where this stuff can happen, and so we've got to be more proactive about inspecting these buildings and looking for a variety of things, looking for walls that are missing mortar, obviously, things, you know, walls that are not completely stable because the cement between the bricks has been worn away over 100 years. We have to look for bulging walls that are not plumb, that are not straight up and down. These are all things that when they do an inspection are looking for instability, you know, in these kind of buildings. So that's why it's so important. And it doesn't happen that often, but the potential is always there for something like this, because I don't know that we're keeping up with a lot of this, because these buildings are, in fact, so old in portions of the city. So,
which is a little unnerving.
It is. And, you know, it makes us think about how important, you know, these kind of regulations are. I mean, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of people don't like the sheds, and I agree. I mean, you know, I teach on 59th Street, right around the corner from your studio, And a lot of the buildings around there have had scaffolding for a very long time, and they're unsightly and whatever. But the thing is that they are incredibly important, though, in situations like this, because this obviously is a much more major collapse, and the whole portion of the building went down. But it's not a situation where, again, which is perhaps even more common, is where you get older buildings where we know there's issues, that we have smaller pieces of debris like that ornamentation that hit that well-known architect several years ago in Midtown and killed her. So that's the kind of reasons why this is important. The reason why doesn't mean that we shouldn't, do the work more quickly. And I think that's another issue. These scaffoldings stay up for so long, and it is a protection means, but it means that we're delaying getting access to actually repairing, or not access, but repairing these walls when needed.
Professor, I'm just going to interrupt you very quickly because we did have a reporter, Jenna DeAngelis, just arrive at the scene. So if you don't mind just standing by, waiting there on the phone, because I'm sure we're going to go back to you. In the meantime, let's go now live to the scene. Jenna DeAngelis there. She just arrived. Jenna, what have you been able to find out so far?
Well, Christina Maurice, we just got here. I can tell you this is a massive scene. It spans several blocks with the FDNY and NYPD. I want to give you a look at the building here behind me. Again, this is on West Burnside Avenue near Osborne Place. Now, you can see this appears to be the end of a building. It just looks like it's sort of collapsed downward, and there is some scaffolding in the area here. Now, the FDNY says so far no reports of injuries, but obviously the building has collapsed, so they do have to do a search here. Again, the FDNY and NYPD are on scene. They say the call came in around 3:30 this afternoon to 172 West Burnside Avenue. Now, according to the Department of Buildings website, there is one active complaint dated October 6th. It noted an inspector was unable to gain access to conduct inspection. We did reach out to the DOB to learn more there. But again, you can see just the extensive damage to this building. And then straight up above, you can see what appears to be the FDNY sort of inspecting the building here. So again, we just got on scene here, so we're going to gather more information, talk to some people in the area, see what we can find out, and of course we are going to bring you another update. But for now, we are live in the Morris Heights section of the Bronx. Jenna DeAngelis, CBS 2 News.
Jenna, before we let you go, we know you just got there, but just your own observations. We don't see this every day. This is a really striking image. What do you make of what you see, how people are reacting as best you can tell? Again, you just got there a few seconds ago.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we don't see this every day. I mean, just being here in person and taking a look at this building, it's quite shocking to see. And there's people standing by with their cell phones. I mean, I'm looking across at neighbors right now, and they look like they're in disbelief. So definitely a shocking scene with a really great presence, a great response here. It looks like the NYPD also has a drone up here to to get a scope of what's happening here. But I think, Maurice, you mentioned this earlier. It's like a bizarre scene. It looks like the corner of the building just sort of collapsed downward. And you can just sort of see into this just one part of the building. But again, I think the best way to describe this is shocking. And just looking at people's faces here, that's sort of what I'm getting from people here. But I'm going to talk to some people, see if they can give us an indication of anything they saw. And then, of course, I'll report back to you.
Jenna, if you can just stand by for one moment, I'd like to direct your photographer, if he could or she could please zoom over back to the collapse area. If we can get those tight shots that we had earlier, you can see that these were people's bedrooms at the very top floor there that hasn't been collapsed. If they could pan up there, we actually see a bed. So clearly that was someone's bedroom. And then so these are personal spaces, personal living spaces for these people that lived in these units that are now affected here. It's mind blowing and heartbreaking all at the same time.
Life totally abruptly interrupted like that, right?
Exactly. All right, Jenna, thank you. Great work there. We're going to let you get to work along with your photographers and crews there as the FDNY continues to do their work as well. If you are just joining us, we are interrupting with breaking news happening in the Bronx right now, specifically the Morris Heights section at 172 West Burnside Avenue. You can see by these pictures the destruction that took place here this afternoon. Right now, the FDNY is telling us that there are no injuries that they know of so far. Clearly, a search for any possible victims is still going on as we speak.
A shocking scene to anyone looking at these images. CBS 2's Tim McNicholas has been looking into the nature of the building, its history in terms of violations, inspections, and so forth. Tim, what have you learned?
Oh, Christine and Maurice, we have learned there have been some recent inspections at this property, and there are also some open violations, 7 open violations, according to the Department of Buildings records. We're still looking through all those, but I want to read you one recent violation notice. This is from November of this year. An inspector wrote, "I observed there are deteriorated and broken mud sills with inadequate support for vertical members throughout." It goes on to say there is one vertical member with a missing mud sill, which can compromise the structural stability, causing a potential collapse, injuring pedestrians or damaging property. Now, this is a large property. We don't know what part of the property that violation applies to, or whether it was for the building itself or perhaps a sidewalk shed. These are all questions that we're looking into, and the Department of Buildings also looking into them. And we don't know if those problems were fixed, but the violation is still listed as open with, quote, "no compliance recorded." The records also indicated there has been some construction at the property recently. We know that because some of the open violations, including that one I just mentioned, is categorized as a construction violation. Christina Maurice.
When those violations were issued, if you did, I'm sorry, I just didn't catch it.
So that one that I read through, that was in November of this year. Okay. There's others as well. There's an open violation from 2020. It looks like there's another one from 2021. Still looking through all that, but that one that I just read you about the missing mud sill, that was from November of this year.
Okay, Tim McNicholas, thank you. We'll let you get back to it. There's much more to come on that front, but there are violations, open violations that have been discussed and at least looked into. So once again, we are looking at really just striking scene here in Morris Heights in the Bronx, 172 Burnside Avenue, the corner of a large building, apartment building that looks at least to be 6 stories tall, just collapsed spontaneously within a few seconds, coming down this afternoon onto the street. FDNY is on the scene right now. You see the ladder, you see the bucket, you see them there trying to find people, any survivors here. There's also an FDNY drone to give them imagery of the scene to try to find any survivors. But so far, there are no reports of any injuries at this point. But there you see the scene. People, our reporter on the scene, Jenna DeAngelis, telling us that everyone pretty much shocked at what has happened here, and at this point, where it's really speculation as to why this came down in this fashion. But that remains to be seen right now. But there you see the interruption, the abrupt, sudden interruption to people's lives. You're seeing into a bedroom. You're seeing the pancaking of a floor beneath that to another floor, and yeah, that's where we are.
It's shocking. It's shocking. And I'm sure for the people that call this neighborhood home, a street and neighborhood that they're all familiar with, this is something that they obviously did not expect. And this is something that is just sending shockwaves throughout that entire neighborhood. We do have Jenna DeAngelis at the scene. Let's go back to her now with some new information. Jenna?
Well, Christina, after you pointed out the bed on the top floor, I had a moment to sort of step back and take a look at what's here. And as you said, these are people's homes. I mean, I see on what looks like to be the 4th floor down, there looks to be a child's coat hanging there. If you go down a little more, it looks like I'm seeing inside someone's closet, appliances. So it really drives home the shock of this all. I mean, people live here, and just watching their home sort of collapse is it's devastating for me to see. I mean, as you mentioned, the FDNY said no reports of injuries so far. This is a building collapse, so they do have to do a search. I want to pan over. There's an FDNY drone, as you mentioned here, getting another set of eyes over the damage here. And this, as I mentioned earlier, is a scene that spans several blocks. Everywhere I look, I see a FDNY ladder truck and the NYPD. Again, this is West Burnside Avenue. The actual address is 172 West Burnside Avenue, and the call came in around 3:30 this afternoon, so they've been out here for a little over an hour now. I'm trying to figure out what caused this. And I think the thing that shocks me standing here is just how you can see it's just this one part of the building, just the corner of this building, and around it there is scaffolding. So that's an indication that there with some sort of work going on here or inspection of some sort going on here. But again, I think as we learn more information out here and begin to talk to people, I think just taking a step back and sort of seeing that these are people's homes is really quite shocking. So again, only got out here about a half hour ago, so going to work on talking to people, seeing if we can get more information out here, and we'll come back to you with another update. Again, this is the Morris Heights section of the Bronx. I'll send it back to you in the studio.
Best you can tell, Jenna, this is a residential building, 6, I believe, maybe 7 stories. We can't tell from here. Maybe you can, but what about on the ground floor? We understand there might be businesses, a bodega or 2 of something of that nature. Can you tell at this point?
So I don't know if you can see from where I am, but I'm sort of blocked off by what appears to be like a gated area here. There must have been some road work going on. I believe I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stories at least. And I do see a yellow awning that says sandwiches. So it looks like there was a bodega down there, but I'm a little bit cut off where I'm standing right now. Across the street is a laundromat here. And of course, a lot of residential here. There's a lot of apartments here. So a lot of people who live here that are standing by, taking this all in, have their cell phones out and sort of just in shock.
Have you been able to observe at all anyone nearby that may be looking for family or maybe in that area wondering if their family is okay? Any chatter about that surrounding you so far?
We're across the street. The FDNY and the NYPD have us sort of taped off across the street, so I'm not able to get close enough to the building to see if there are people looking for anyone. Oops, I'm so sorry. Yeah, right now what I can see is just the FDNY ladder trucks, and it looks like in a cherry picker all the way up at the top with a flashlight, trying to get a look in there. But I definitely will start talking to people out here and just see what I can learn from people who live here. Obviously, these are people's homes.
Hey, Jenna DeAngelis, we'll let you go track down some more information. We appreciate it. Let's go back to the phone right now. Professor Glenn Corbett, Professor of Fire Sciences at John Jay. You've been watching us this afternoon with us. What do you make of what you see now? Night is falling. Firefighters are up against even more now, more elements as the night gets cooler, and they look for people.
Right, and you see a little bit more now with the newer videos. We see that green fencing around the building, which would indicate there's some kind of construction going on here. There's also a piece of heavy equipment. You could see the portion of it, yellow heavy equipment there in the foreground behind that green fence. So it's possible something else was going on in the street. I mean, I think earlier one of your reporter mentioned about construction and things. That's a possibility too here, that there may have been some construction work going on even in the street in front of this building. They may have done something. So, but for right now, you know, the most important thing is to make sure that no one is in fact in that pile. Some of the other video I've seen looks like some of the firefighters are actually much closer now to accessing that pile. So as it gets dark now, of course, they're going to have to set up lighting and stuff just to maintain some level of understanding of any movement of the building. That's what these tower ladders are looking in different windows. You can see in the video here, just making sure no one's in there. But they're also looking to make sure there's no movement of any of this other remaining sort of hanging floors that are still there intact, and including the one at the very top. So yeah, these are all. This is going to make it more difficult, you know, at night and stuff. But you know, we'll have to see again if in fact anyone has been determined to perhaps be trapped here, and how they're going to access them through the outside, or if again we mentioned earlier about the bodega, if there's any people in the store.
So many, you know, Professor, real quick, so many different factors to consider here. And according to our reporting, Tim McNicholas, I don't know if you heard him, if you were able to hear his report, but he did mention 7 open violations, the latest being issued in November of this year. And he mentioned something about broken mud sills. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's pretty clear if there's that many violations that the city's been watching this building basically, and was concerned enough about it to write these violations. Obviously, if they're there, and so the mud sill issue could have played a role here. I mean, again, it all depends on again exactly where the collapse started. And I think again, from my perspective, it's pretty clear that the wall that moved first and pulled these floors down with them as it went down. So, but again, everything would point, of course, for the most part, to somewhere, perhaps even at the lowest portion of the building where that all started. And again, there's so many factors here that could come up that actually precipitated this happening.
For those who don't know what a mudsill is, can you just kind of flesh that out for us?
Yeah, let me just mention real quick. You can see the drone that's actually now on screen right now. That is they're using that to watch the stability of the building, basically, and are using that to there's a camera on the drone, and then there's a screen down below, and basically again, transmitting images and stuff. So they just want to make sure there's no movement there. As far as the mud sill goes, I mean, that's at the base of the building. So again, it's just a structural element of the building at the lowest portion of it, which kind of makes sense if that was deteriorated, particularly if it was wood. That maybe they cited this, and that might be one of the reasons that it happened. It may not be the sole reason. Again, there may be other things that were happening, the construction, the wind, rain, whatever, that sort of pushed this over the edge in terms of collapse. So, well, the
report that was filed, the inspector wrote that, this one vertical member with missing mudsill, which can compromise the structural stability, causing a potential collapse, injuring pedestrians and damaging property. That's what the inspector wrote in November.
That may be, that probably rises very high to the list of what happened here. That the DOB, the Department of Buildings actually did spot a problem like this.
It's also unclear what section of the building they were referring to. We have to at least point
we
that out.
don't know that yet. But I mean, it's very possible that's linked to what's going on here, particularly. And it wasn't even just the mudsill. And it mentioned in the report, which I don't have, it said you said that it also included a missing vertical element too, correct?
Right. Correct.
Yeah. So that may be a role here. Maybe part of what happened here. But like I said, when we were talking earlier, it was kind of hard to see things. But now it looks like this building is under some kind of construction work. I mean, the fact there's a green green fence around the entire site. I mean, it also could be that there's work out in the street here too. And I don't know if I heard that. Did one of the reporters mention that? Somebody said about street work here.
She mentioned that there's
that way.
Yeah,
right?
She mentioned that there's partitions around that area that may indicate that there was street work, but we do not have that confirmed.
And so what will happen here is, after everyone's been recovered, found, and hopefully everybody walked away uninjured with this situation. Of course, as we said earlier, the first issue will be to stabilize the remaining portion of the building if they can. And then, of course, when the investigation starts, then they'll look at.
God damn, what's going on, squad? Salute, squad. Unfortunately, so far, there is no injuries. No injuries. But do you see the coat hanging on the goddamn wall, guys? Straight out of the movies, yo. Straight out of the movies, bro. God damn, yo. Prayers sent to all the people, all the folks that got to go through this.
All these different factors and figure out which one of these is the one that actually caused the collapse to commence, basically, and how did the other situations, the other issues sort of play a role in this whole thing.
And our photographer on the scene there giving us an image, a close-up image a second ago of what looks like a small coat, probably a child's coat, a life so abruptly and rudely interrupted there, just in a devastating way. I was going to ask you,
Yeah. I was going to say, it's pretty remarkable thinking about there's a young child that probably lived in that room here.
Right.
It's pretty remarkable that no one said at this point that someone, basically had fallen out of that floor. Obviously, one of the floors is completely missing. The others are slanted. And you can imagine if there was a child in that room, they would have ended up, going down with the wall, basically. So we're hoping that wasn't the case here, but that's of course again what the fire department's looking for. And, you know, they've dealt with lots of collapses in the past, and they'll get, you know, hopefully get as close as they can to see if in fact there are anyone there.
You can only hope people were not home at that hour.
Right.
One other thing you pointed out, there was a yellow heavy piece of construction equipment in the street, or at least outside the building. I'm wondering, how do you think that could potentially precipitate something like this or lead to it? You know, with vibrations, with contact, what would that look like?
Sure, and that's we don't know exactly. It's certainly not, you know, it's not a bucket loader or something like. It's hard to tell because I only see the very top of it. Basically, there's you know, there's an arm on it. I don't know exactly what it is, but the issue is that even if it was simply construction work in the street, like for example, opening the street up for utilities and things, you know, you're basically you know, creating a situation where all those, as you just mentioned, all the vibrations from that equipment can be basically sent over to the building, received by the building, and maybe, again, push the building over the edge, you know, if it was that close to a failure to begin with. So that's why when you have, you know, a building like this that's unstable, one of the hardest things to do, you know, is to determine exactly when, you know, a building needs to be evacuated, for example. And the fact that the building inspector wrote the report the way he did, it was, you know, what you read earlier, it's pretty clear that at least that inspector believed that this was a significant hazard. And then the question becomes, should this building have been vacated for that reason? Meaning that basically.
My thing, that's the thing. And that's the thing with New York, guys. They'll take your money and the rent due. They want their rent. But these mofos don't fix their violations. They don't fix their building violations. Some of these buildings run around here with 400, 500 violations within 2 years and shit like that, bro. They don't come check on the elevator. You know what I mean? But they take your money.
Building be evacuated because of that kind of problem.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question to you, is if it's that serious of an issue, we've got to look at the question of, you know, why didn't they evacuate the building if there was that much of a danger that was posed. I did want to just add that some new information coming into our newsroom is that the FDNY says this is in fact a 7-story building. The main floor, the ground level, is a business. They do have dogs on top of the rubble searching for anyone. And of course, you also mentioned, Professor Corbett, the drone that they also have up in the air. And we can clearly see by these pictures from our live camera there at the scene that they do have the ladder trucks up searching and assessing the structural damage, and also just whether or not they need to do some supports and see if the rest of this building is also in danger of collapsing. Earlier, you mentioned that one of the top collapse units.
Sis, hold up, sis. Y'all don't be knowing what to tell the people, yo. Y'all don't be knowing what to tell the people, bro. Stop reading from the script and start reading from your heart, mama. All right? People, my people. Things like this happen to bring people closer to God. None of this shit in this house, none of that shit in that house matters. You know the shit that you think matter to you the most, none of that shit matter if you don't believe. You know what I mean, guys? Remember, this is not a sympathy club. It's not a sympathy club. We don't come for the simp and sympathy over here, bro. We come for the reality. And reality sucks. Reality bites, guys. But this is the truth. This is the truth. Things like this happen to bring people closer to God, guys. Now, think about this. Look at this shit. How the fuck just this part of the building collapsed? Just this little section, this little corner, and thank God nobody was home at the time of this little. Now, the rest of the building, they evacuated. But this structure, this little piece of the building, still up. It just didn't stay up. It's crazy, guys. It's crazy. But God don't work in mysterious ways. That's wrong. He work in equal and exact ways, bro.
This is actually based in the Bronx, Professor. Can you just give us some more specifics about how the FDNY specializes in this department?
Yeah, well, the FDNY, like I said, is one of the oldest fire departments in the country and has developed a lot of expertise, training, equipment, and things like that. So the Collapse Rescue Unit, Rescue 3, is an elite unit that deals with these kind of situations. It's been around for decades. And what it entails is basically the rescue companies in the fire department are the sort of the elite companies. They are the highest trained companies in the city. And they each have their own specialties. And what just happens at the Bronx, they do specifically specialize in building collapse. And so what that means is they have the expertise, meaning they drill and train all the time on understanding how to rescue people from a building like this that's been destabilized, that basically it's a danger to the firefighters to try to get in there to this pile to find people. So they've developed systems and protocols and equipment to do that. So we mentioned the drone earlier. I would bet that the robotic dog now the fire department has, the two of them will probably be deployed here perhaps on the inside of the building, particularly for that bodega. If in fact they can't get access, if there is, again, we're all guessing into the bodega on the corner there, but a business there, but they would access it from inside the building, and that's the perfect place to send the dog in to, as it gets closer to the collapse here on the outside of the building, to try to see if in fact there's any victims that may still be trapped in there. But their trucks and their equipment are all, again, set up for this kind of situation. So they've got everything from transits that are used by surveyors to watch for building movement. They've got all sorts of shoring equipment to stabilize things so they can get in there and actually get closer to the building and do what they need to do.
Oh man, that looked crazy, guys. But Ms. Goodbread said, yo, you can't just leave it like that. And I gotta break it down. She said break it down, so I'm gonna break it down, guys. When I say things like this happen to bring you closer to God, right? Everybody have a period and a season of loneliness, right? And a lot of you niggas be running from that loneliness. But that loneliness you need to embrace, because that loneliness is how you gonna connect with your God. You know, when I talk MGTOW, when I talk this MGTOW stuff, you know what I mean? The real MGTOW stuff, not the stuff that have you go away from the ways of the world and just standing over there in the corner looking stupid, because you got to go to God. You know what I mean? That's what he tried to do. When things like this happen, people normally be sad. They start to mourn. You know, when you lose a loved one, you go into your season or period of loneliness. You know what I mean? And that's how you get right with your creator. Yeah, it may hurt. It may be painful, but it's going to be the healing. It's going to be the healing. Stop running from that period of loneliness. A lot of y'all fight that shit. Y'all be running. Y'all cling. Y'all go back. Y'all get around your mother or get around the family, the same toxic family that ain't did nothing for you. Your seed ain't grow since you've been planted, but you go run around there. You go run from your period of loneliness to go get around family and hear they bullshit. But that's what you're comfortable with. Embrace your season. Embrace your period of loneliness, guys. And that's why bad shit happen. Bad shit happen to bring you into your season of loneliness to get right with God, bro. He control all this shit. Y'all keep thinking y'all doing something, bro. Y'all keep walking in pride. That's y'all problem. You know what I mean? Humble yourselves like that. I don't mean humble yourselves how the black community mean humble yourself. See, the black community tell you humble yourself. That means stop growing. When I tell you humble yourself, that means stop walking with all that pride, yo. Stop walking with all that pride, yo. Loosen your chest, bro. You all right. Everybody all right. Breathe.
They've got all sorts of detection devices looking for any kind of gas collection stuff. If there was a gas leak, that's a potential to happen here too, because it may have sheared off some gas lines. I mean, there's all sorts of different tools that they carry on these very large trucks, and it just happens that it's based there in the Bronx. So they'll be using probably a lot of those things today and tonight, just to make sure that, again, at the end of the day, that if there is in fact anybody trapped, that they'll get, take care of those folks and stuff.
Thankfully, we've got the right team there on the ground. Professor, we cannot thank you enough for your insight tonight. It has been spot on and excellent, and we really appreciate the insight. We're going to take our viewers here into the 5 o'clock news as we continue to watch the scene, 172 West Burnside Avenue, Morris Heights in the Bronx, a building, as you can see there, the corner of it, just coming down, raining down onto the streets without warning, interrupting lives, basically terrifying the neighborhood. And the search is on for people, for survivors, as we looked at lives abruptly interrupted right there in Morris Heights. Our reporters are there on the scene. FDNY has a drone up above, and we've got every angle of this thing covered, but really striking images this afternoon.
It really has been shocking to see. But again, if we can just stress right now, the silver lining in this, the FDNY saying no reports of any injuries that we can tell at this time, at this 5 o'clock hour. And right now at 5, we will continue to follow this breaking news of that partial collapse building in the Bronx.
Part of that building in Morris Heights has crumbled to the ground, but right now FDNY, again, not reporting any injuries. Good evening once again. I'm Maurice Dubois.
And I'm Christine Johnson. So these pictures that are coming out of the Morris Heights area are just really incredible. We've been watching all of this unfold here in the past hour. And the crews right now are digging through the rubble to investigate how this happened.
Let's get right to the ground. CBS 2's Jenna DeAngelis on the scene with the very latest for us right now. Jenna, what do you see?
Marisa, Christine, it's a completely different feel when you're out here looking at it. I mean, it's just completely devastating. You pointed out this out earlier, but if you look at the building all the way up top, you can see someone's bed. And as you scan down the building, you see the inside of people's homes. I see what looks like a child's coat in a closet, appliances. It's just devastating. And you just watch, when you look at this building, it's just the corner of the building that it looks like just came sort of straight down. Below it is rubble. And earlier we saw what appeared to be the NYPD with a dog looking through the rubble. As you mentioned, the FDNY has reported no injuries so far, but they are still scanning the destruction here. To give you an idea, again, this is 172 West Burnside Avenue. It's a building that is 6 floors of what appears to be apartments, and then the 7th floor, the main floor, is businesses. We're being kept back a little bit from the NYPD and FDNY, which are on scene, but they have eyes all over this. They have the FDNY drone up ahead, firefighters on cherry pickers above, scanning the building with flashlights, and it's a massive scene that spans blocks. So they were called to this at 3:30 this afternoon, again, 172 West Burnside Avenue. So far, no reports of injuries. I did talk to some people out here trying to get an idea of what's happening here. And so far, everyone we spoke to were just neighbors that either saw this on the news or heard about it and came out here to see what is going on. So we're continuing to learn more information here. But again, 172 West Burnside Avenue, a massive scene here. And the FDNY trying to get to, and the NYPD trying to get to the bottom of exactly what happened here. For now, we are live in the Morris Heights section of the Bronx. Jenna DeAngelis, CBS 2 News.
All right, Jenna, thank you for that report. We want to get to Fire Commissioner Laura Kavanaugh now. She joins us on the phone to give us some more information about what is happening on Burnside Avenue. Commissioner, thank you for joining us. Can you please just tell us what is the latest from the scene? Are you hearing reports of anyone that might be trapped under that rubble or even in the building?
Yeah, so this is the latest. First and foremost, I want to emphasize this is a live scene. We have our firefighters, our EMTs, and our medics through this rubble, using our canine unit and locate anyone that could be under that. We will presume with an occupied building that there could be someone there until we eliminate that possibility. So right now for us, we know that there was a major collapse. We know that there could be someone under there, although we haven't confirmed that, and we are doing everything in our power to make sure we can find them if they're there or to eliminate the possibility.
Commissioner, can you describe what you're up against? I mean, we see it, but in terms of your expertise and how your crews go about their business here, what does it look like?
I would say this came in as a 1060, and what that means for the fire department is a serious collapse. And so we're taking it accordingly, because our mission is life. Until we confirm that a place like this was not occupied, we're going to go to work. So given that this is an active building, a building with commercial space and residential space, we're going to presume there could be someone there, and we're going to operate like there is.
Commissioner, are there any evacuations happening in and around this area?
So just in order to stay clear, obviously the building itself is evacuated, but otherwise we're just asking residents to stay clear. As I said, this is an active scene and we want to let the first responders go to work.
At this point, you're obviously laser focused on finding people, but do you have any idea what could have happened here?
We don't. The DOB commissioner and his team are on scene, so when we are done with our search and rescue, they will take over the investigation.
Commissioner, can you tell us whether or not there was any road construction in this area going on?
So I cannot. That'll be part of the investigation. You know, like I said, we're solely focused on making sure that we're finding any victims that could be there. Once we have completed our operation, a full investigation will take place.
And one more thing here, Commissioner. We understand that you have an elite unit, well-trained, highly specialized in this kind of thing. Can you tell us a little bit more about them?
Yes, so we have a number of specialized units. Our members actually drill and train on this regularly. We actually have a rubble pile at our academy for this very reason. So we have a number of members that are specially trained in exactly this: search and rescue in a collapse, search and rescue using canines, and for our EMTs and medics for treating people even in the collapse or as soon as they get out. So this is something we train for regularly. We have our best folks on the team.
Can you tell us about some of the tools that are being used at the scene there? We noticed a drone up in the air. What is that being used for?
So a drone is so that we can see overhead, we can see what's going on. And in particular, in a situation like this, where it might be a large area, there might be areas of instability that our members can't get to. We want to see whether or not we can see any victims or anything that could be a danger to the first responders across the scene. So we use these drones both to find additional victims and to protect our first responders in these dangerous conditions.
And we understand you also have canine dogs at the scene. Can you tell us what they're doing?
Yeah, so they are trained in search and rescue. They are specifically trained to help us narrow down the search area and point to where there could be someone. So they're trained in that, and we're following their lead right now.
Okay, FDNY Fire Commissioner Laura Kavanaugh, thank you for the insight. We wish you the best going forward tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thanks.
This is breaking news from Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
And what a day of breaking news it is indeed. Look at that. The picture almost says that all. We're following this for the past hour. A partial building collapse in the Bronx, the Morris Heights section.
An entire side of that building, really a corner, just peeled away. Investigators on the scene right now trying to figure out if there is anyone underneath all that rubble.
And we say partial collapse, but that means some of that is still standing and it could come down as well. We don't know. They don't know yet. And that is one of the big problems. Eyewitness News reporter Jim Dolan is live at the scene with the very latest. Jim?
Bill, we just want to give you a quick update as to what's going on the ground here. You see all the fire department equipment here. I want to just point out over here, and then again, further over here, you see all these ambulances that are standing by. Well, they're standing by for injured people, but so far, at least, they are not being used. That's the most important thing right now. They have no sign of injuries and nobody dead so far. It's still very early in this. The scene is back there. Matt, take a look. You can see the rescue workers working up there on the top, and they are working below that as well. They are looking for signs of survivors, looking for signs of life or injured people there. And so far, at least, we have no word that they have found anybody, which so far, at least, we want to keep qualifying this is good news. Just a short while ago, we spoke with a young woman named Mary who was on her way home from school when all of this happened. Mary saw a lot of this. When you saw the building coming down, what was that like? What were you seeing?
Oh no, like it was a lot. It was a lot of sand. Like my eyes, I couldn't see nothing. My eyes were hurting because the sand was going to my eyes. Like it was like I was not really seeing nothing. But it was really bad. Like I was just thinking about the people that was down there and the people in the building.
Yeah, Mary knows people who live in that building. She has not been in touch with them yet since all of this happened. A lot of people have told us that there really wasn't much noise. Now, some of the people we spoke with were inside their homes when this happened, but they said it really didn't make much sound. They didn't hear the building come down. Even somebody I spoke with was right across the street, didn't hear this collapse, but heard the sirens and heard the reaction of people. Again, 6-story building partially collapsed here in the Bronx. Reporting live, Jim Dolan, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Jim, if we could talk to you a little bit longer, Jim, if that's all right, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
when you look up.
Jim, yo, why you gotta be an old man, Jim? Why you can't let the little man rock, bro? God damn, Jim. Jim got to be the cranky old man, yo.
What do you see? Because I know what we saw, and I want to get what you see from a ground floor.
Bill, let's take a look. So what we're seeing is all this fire department equipment on the ground, and we can see the people up in the building, the fire department up in the building, outside the building, but on those fire department ladders, searching that building, searching the roof of the building and the apartments on that corner. Remember, this was the collapse was mostly confined to the corner of this building, and that's where the fire department has focused their efforts to see if there's anybody inside. Matt, you see one of those is off to the left on that top floor. Matt, I don't know if you can see that, but you can see his light looking into those apartments, trying to see if anybody is still inside, if they need to go into those apartments to find anyone. That one has moved. That apparatus on the left has moved in the last few minutes to that 6th floor to see if anybody is up there. You can see that they are trying to find anybody inside.
All right, guys, I ain't gonna hold y'all any longer. This was a pop-up stream, so y'all wrap up, strap up, drink responsibly, pray for the people, and pray for yourself. You know what I mean, guys? Be looking for that Charleston White video. That should be coming out like 8:30, 9 o'clock on this channel, guys. All right, so set your notifications, y'all, and we gonna see y'all later, yo. That's gonna be a good one, yo.